Hey, what's up guys, it's Oakley, and CA released a bit of a video going behind the scenes talking about how they developed the various units of Total War Warhammer 2. This was already something that we had seen at the Res release, but it was kind of shown in the background as part of a live stream and wasn't officially released as a standalone video. So here we're going to cover it and break down kind of the confirmed Lizardmen units and then also go through the rest of the roster. So in this video, for instance, they confirmed the basic units are going to be the Skink. These guys are pretty straightforward. They're vast in number. They're skirmishers with a surprisingly a high level of power. So think of them kind of like goblins, although I think they'll have probably a little bit of a higher edge on them because they're obviously little dinosaurs, ferocious guys. But yeah, probably goblin-like, vast in numbers, but still light, squishy, and small units. And so yeah, that's how they're going to function. So probably comparable to goblins. And then they also have an alternate version, which is the chameleon skinks. So these guys are more skirmishing focused. So just like the goblins have the regular night goblins and then night goblin archers, these are going to be the archer variants that are kind of more sneaky. So they have blowpipes, and presumably they'll have vanguard deployed, and they can obviously hide in the brush and maybe even have good detection. I'm not quite sure. But yeah, the way I see these guys is the goblin equivalent. Again, I'm not quite sure if they have the upper hand over goblins. Presumably, if they're using blowpipes like this, it'll be a shorter range. And to compensate for that, perhaps it'll do more damage. Not quite sure how it'll fare against armor, but it should be good against kind of exposed units. Next level up, past the Skinks, is going to be the larger dinosaur forests. This is going to be the SAURUS warriors. So a step up. If we're going to stay kind of along the lines of the greenskins, the comparison to these guys that I would make would probably be a little bit above Orc Boys, kind of tending towards Orc Boy big guns. So the SAURUS warriors are not, I wouldn't say bred, but they're reptiles basically, and their species is geared towards war. They have high loyalty, and in this case the description says unwavering loyalty. So that'll be one of the big things for the Lizardmen, is I think their more elite units are going to be pretty good morale, but anything like a skink or below is going to be pretty easily scared like the goblins. But above that they should do better, so I presume they'll have better stats in terms of leadership than the orcs, but perhaps not so much. Maybe not as much hitting power as the orcs, so perhaps they'll have more staying power than orc forces, but not hit quite as hard. I think that's maybe the balance that they'll have. Or perhaps they'll be stronger but just be in smaller number. SAURUS guards are an example of a perhaps more elite version, so just like you might have the orc boys, a step up might be the big guns, and then after that black orcs. So the SAURUS guards are probably more like big guns in that sense, and there could be a couple more knockoffs or variants of the SAURUS guys to give them a little bit more variety. One of them, for instance, that might apply to heroes would be the Old Bloods and Sunbloods. So these guys are drawn out of the Age of Sigmar roster, but I still think CA could make an example of them. So these will be kind of comparable to an Empire General, something like that. Very good stats for leadership, and then also melee capabilities. It might be the same thing as, again, keeping along with greenskins, it could be like a war boss. But yeah, there's two versions that I saw here on the Games Workshop shop. The one on the left is just going to be a kind of a standard Old Blood, a mighty war leader, and the one on the right is going to be the Sunblood, excuse me, version, and he's supposed to be a very ancient guy, very tested in battle, having survived many fights. Next level up is going to be the KROXIGORs. So these guys are more akin to trolls, I would think. Very large bodies, twice the size of a SAURUS, it says here, and they have big clubs that they wield around. They're meant to break battle lines, so to me this sounds a lot like trolls. So expect larger unit models with fewer units apiece, but be more of the monstrous type infantry. So yeah, that's going to be your KROXIGORs. Pretty high health, high armor, high morale, and lots of AoE. I don't think there's that many variants on these guys, so again, I kind of see a lot of these units matching up pretty similarly to the greenskins. I'd be eager to see kind of how they match up pound for pound. Like, what is a KROXIGOR versus a troll? What is going to be a SAURUS versus an orc boy? The last of the main kind of races or species for the Lizardmen is going to be the SLANN. So these guys aren't necessarily great in terms of fighting mano-a-mano. They're more going to be your big magical spellcasters. So for instance, we've seen a bunch of them in the trailers. The main one going to be one of the legendary lords, but they're also going to be recruitable presumably as just standard heroes that you can bring to the battlefield, because there's a fair amount of them in the lore, although they're definitely one of the the races that are few and far between compared to for instance, the SKINKS. A couple of the units that are confirmed. So, for instance, here, this awesome pterodactyl unit that is actually called the TERRADON, and so these are going to be more akin to the Hawk Riders, I would think, from the Wood Elves. So they're fast, nimble, they can fire projectiles, but it's kind of like a Hawk Rider meets the Skyhammer from the Dwarves. Or a gyro bomber, because these guys actually carry what's called sunleech bolas, which are these big canisters, essentially bombs that they can then drop on the enemy. So obviously they'll have a 1 or 2 use limited supply, so that'll be pretty useful. So kind of take the Warhawks and then give them a little bit of area of effective bombing capability, and there you have the Pterodon. So these are going to be pretty useful units. I think Warhawks are pretty underused at the time being. Next, we're going to see the Cold Ones expanded upon. These guys look awesome. And they're actually creatures that feature, they're kind of like raptors in the forest, and so the Lizardmen do tame them, but at the same time so do the Dark Elves, and so we'll be seeing them on both sides of the battlefield, which might be kind of interesting, although they're kind of separate breeds, where the ones fighting for the Lizardmen are a bit more jungly versus the ones in the Dark Elves are a bit more found in caves and dark places, things like that. I'm trying to compare them to other cavalry. It's going to be hard to say. I don't think they're renowned for being the best cavalry, but being kind of that their mounts are huge dinosaurs, presumably they'll have scare effects against other cavalry, especially horses, who are probably going to be afraid of them. And then here's the Cold One, but this is the Dark Elf variant, so obviously it's got the cool sleek armor on them. And yeah, I don't know how they'll fare stat for stat if you take like a Cold One mounted by a Dark Elf versus a Cold One mounted by the Lizardmen. Interesting how they're going to try and differentiate those. A cool thing that you also see for the Dark Elf roster is that they're going to be pulling around chariots, presumably. We haven't had that confirmed, but that is a potential way for them to be distinguished. So that is pretty scary. Definitely going to want to shoot her when you see these guys. And yeah, the artwork on left is pretty sick. Next, we're going to be seeing, not really a model of it, we only saw it in engine, but pretty much confirming a Carnosaur here. So yeah, these guys are essentially your T-Rexes, although their little arms are a bit more brutal than that. They have big, massive claws that they can use to wield and tear other forces apart. And yeah, so these guys are going to be your big mounts. Presumably a lot of your lords, especially if you go with some of the old bloods, you'll be able to rank up and bring these guys to the battlefield. What would be an equivalent? We don't really have one at the time being. I mean, yeah, the Lizardmen are going to have some very heavy-hitting monsters. I don't know if they're going to hit as hard as a Tree Man, but perhaps they'll be even faster, actually, which will be really potentially devastating. Another Carnosaur variant is going to be a Troglodon, which is supposed to be kind of like a white... I don't know if they're blind, but they're massive reptiles who rely more on their scent to pick out their prey. And it says here, venom-flecked tongues, and they destroy with deadly spittle. So a little bit of like a venomous variant on the Carnosaur. Next we have the Stegadon, which is pretty sweet. So there's a couple variants of these. The first one that seems to be announced is gonna kind of be akin to an Arachnarok spider, namely where it's a big creature that's lumbering around and has charge potential. And instead of goblins on top, it's going to be skinks. Looks like there's going to be an option, according to the models on Games Workshop, for them to not only throw javelins, but also have kind of little ballistas on top of them. And then there's 2 different pieces of equipment that you can mount on top of them. So one is going to be the Engine of the Gods. And I guess there's a couple different variants on them, but they kind of all serve the same function. And the description that I found says, the Engine of the Gods here can summon raging celestial infernos and even restore fallen Seraphon. So Seraphon is a mention from Age of Sigmar. Seraphon is the new name of the Lizardmen. So this is perhaps an Age of Sigmar only unit, but I think the Engine of the Gods was probably in the older version as well. So expect to see this take place in Total Warhammer 2 with some resurrection capabilities. It would be really cool. The next big creature that we have confirmed is the Bastiladon. This one has 2 variants that are actually really funny and really interesting. So the first one kind of functions kind of like a Luminarch of Hysh, and this one, they call it the Solar Engine, so it radiates staggering power of the sun, casting forth death beams that turn armor to molten slag and incinerate anything alive extremely quickly. So kind of like a Luminarch of Hysh, perhaps with a little bit more area of effect, but we'll see. I mean, the mount here does way more damage and is more armored than a Luminarch, so either the cost goes up or the projectile just doesn't do as much damage. The other variant here is going to be the Arc of Sotek, and this one is really actually pretty funny and cool. What it does is it spits forth a never-ending tangle of serpents whose star-envenomed fangs bite deep into flesh, causing the blood within to burn with the flames of Azir. So that's a very interesting variant. A Stegadon that basically fires snakes at its enemies. So I love the creativity of these units. I would love to see animations for this guy. Next, so that's kind of been the ones that are pretty much confirmed. Next, we're going to be going into other units that aren't confirmed but could potentially make it into the game. These are ones that I picked off from the wiki and also from the Games Workshop store. So the next one is Ripperdactyl. So this is a variant on the TERRADON, where instead of being skirmishers, these guys attack more directly. So instead of the Hawk Riders, it's kind of like just Hawks, where these guys come into the meat of it. They're swift, they're quick. Perhaps they'll function a bit like Harpies. I think that would be a pretty fair equivalent to them. Fairly well armored, but mostly dealing some good charge damage. So these are going to be great for taking out skirmishers. So it looks like the Lizardmen are going to be a pretty big rush army. Another unit that they have here is the Razordon. This one's really interesting. It's a kind of a creature that's found in the forest, and what they do is they herd it towards the enemies, and what it does is it projects out darts in kind of all directions. And so in the battle, you kind of corral it towards your enemy, poke it with a stick, and have it kind of shoot out spikes in all directions. So an area of effect time bomb unit would be really cool. I don't know if it can recharge, but this would be a very interesting unit. Definitely a game changer to control the pace of your battles, and you kind of waddle this guy into a blob of units and have it explode would be really interesting. Another potential unit is going to be the Salamander. So this one is somewhat quick. It says here swift moving on both land and water, spitting a caustic stream at their prey, finishing them with corrosive bites. So it's kind of like the Chaos Warhounds, but perhaps as a single entity, but fast moving, that has kind of like corrosive poison attacks. So that could be interesting. And then the next two ones that I really hope make in the game, but these are very big question marks. The first on the left is the Dread Saurian, very big monster that's definitely very hard to kill. I think it's the most ferocious of like the T-Rex type units. So he's going to be very difficult to take out. Question remains if he's going to be actually in the battlefield. And the one on the right hand side is the Thunder Lizard. This is the biggest monster in the game, I think. Anyway, it's a very giant lizard where you can mount a lot of stuff on top of it. I don't think it's an official unit. It's in the lore, but I don't think this ever really made its way onto the tabletop. But yeah, it is huge. I mean, this is bigger than a Mumakil. Bigger than any other unit we've seen in previous Total War. So if they bring this to life, holy crap, that's going to take half your army budget. But yeah, so that's it for the units. Next, they go ahead and talk a bit about the world and what to expect. They don't reveal too much. They just go over a little bit of the art. So we get to see some of that. Talk about differentiating the races. Talk about trying to include new and interesting mechanics into the gameplay. And then here real shortly they'll be showing off some art assets, talking about how they had to go into fleshing out the campaign. So here's a lot of the art assets. Obviously for the Lizardmen it's going to be a bit more jungly, whereas when you get a bit more to the north and you start going towards Nagaroth and the Dark Elves, that's where you're going to see a bit more of the lava and darkness, kind of like Chaos Realms. And then here we see a little bit of gameplay showing some of Lustria. So that was a cool little glimpse to see, but not too much was present in that little snippet. I do hope we get to see a bit more of the campaign gameplay here soon. And yeah, some more concept art that shows the different temples, and that really makes me wonder what the battlefields are going to be like. How are the sieges going to take place? Are they going to be very open-ended? I really hope they change up the sieges in the second one. Versus the Dark Elves, the Dark Elf fortresses are going to be a bit more traditional. I hope that with the Lizardmen temples, they go a bit more of the route of Shogun 2 with like tiers and terraces. That would be really interesting. Definitely change up the pace of what we've seen thus far. And it should still be easy on the AI. I mean, that's one of the reasons they did it in Shogun 2. And then, yeah, here they show off a couple more of the art assets for various other mounts and characters. And then they're going to round off the end here, showing a little bit of the initial trailer. Not too much extra is revealed here, but I figured I'd show the last little bit of this video. In the background, keep an eye on the different models that they show in the back. A lot of Lizardmen units. But yeah, so that's it overall. I'm very excited for the Lizardmen. I think they're going to be people's favorites faction of all. Now, of course, that may be challenged by Skaven, but as far as we know, Skaven is not confirmed. What Ratmen? No one knows of those guys. But yeah, High Elves, I mean, they're vanilla characters. They're going to be really cool and exciting to play, but we've already seen the Wood Elves, so I'm not super excited for them. Dark Elves could be a cool twist. Some of their units are going to be pretty scary. But again, it's kind of like Wood Elves meets Chaos. I'm not super excited for the Dark Elves. Lizardmen is really where it's at. So anyways, that's it. Hope you guys enjoyed. See you in the next one.